Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Good Call with Mackenzie Salmon. Today's episode is going to be a fun one. Fun for me because I did not have to put on any makeup for this. Not that I ever feel like I have to, but I want to look decent for podcasts. But this one is going to be audio only. We're going to be chatting about this upcoming Super Bowl between the Seahawks and the Patriots. It's going to be fun. So grab your popcorn and let's chat about these two teams, shall we? Okay, let's dive in here. Okay, y'all. So I keep hearing people call the Super Bowl matchup random, and trust me, I get it. Because if you're the kind of fan who lives off preseason expectations and weekly power rankings, then Seahawks Patriots probably looks like the NFL pulled names out of a hat. But the more I've sat with it, the more I think random is definitely the wrong word because random makes it sound like luck, and luck is not how you end up in the Super Bowl. This matchup feels unexpected because it wasn't loud all season. It didn't come with the kind of storyline the league spoon feeds us from September. Nobody spent the entire fall chanting inevitable about Seattle or New England the way they've done about other teams in other years. Both of these teams had stretches where they were good and stretches where people still weren't sure what they were watching. And the reason we're here now is because they didn't spiral when it wasn't pretty. They didn't break character. They didn't have injuries like some other teams. And they didn't chase what X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, wanted them to be. And they also did not confuse style points with winning football. And that's why this game is interesting to me. Not because it's a throwback to the 2010s and not because it's a rematch in some, I guess, cosmic sense, you can say, but because it's two franchises that found an identity and they stayed married to it long enough for it to pay off. And when you can do that in the NFL, you don't need to dominate every single headline. You just need to stack wins and survive the moments where everyone else is panicking. And if you want to understand why Seattle, why New England, why are they here, you have to start with the quarterbacks because this Super Bowl is basically a case study in quarterback psychology, and I mean that in the best way. Let's start off with Sam Darnold. So, Sam Darnold being in the Super Bowl is uncomfortable for people because it forces us to admit something that we all hate admitting. The NFL is not always great at distinguishing a quarterback's actual ability from the environment he's been living in. We love to label guys early. All of us do it. We decide who's a winner, who's a bust, and then we spend the next 5 years using every single throw to confirm the label we already chose. If he makes a mistake, well, there's proof. If he plays well, it's an exception. That's how this league works socially, even if we pretend it doesn't. Now, what Seattle did with Darnold wasn't some miracle reinvention where suddenly he became a different person. They didn't try to make him play like someone else. They gave him a structure where he could play like a professional. And if you've watched his career, you know how valuable that is. The best thing a coaching staff can do for a quarterback isn't always giving him more freedom. Sometimes it's giving him fewer decisions, clearer reads, and a run game and defense that allow him to be patient without feeling like every single drive is do or die. And the production is real. So when you look at the numbers, Darnold threw for 4,048 yards this season with 25 touchdowns, and ESPN has him at a 99.1 passer rating. Y'all, that's not he survived. That's he ran the offense at a level that wins games, and you don't get those kinds of numbers by living in chaos every single week. Now, the reason I keep saying structure is because Seattle didn't ask him to be a superhero, and you can actually feel that in the way the team plays. It's not frantic, it's not desperate, and it's not built on the idea that the quarterback has to rescue them from their own mistakes, if that makes sense. They play like a team that believes the game is 4 quarters long. And if you've watched enough Super Bowls, then you know the teams that win usually have that vibe. They're okay with a punt. They're okay with resetting. They're chill for the most part. They're okay with winning ugly for a while because they trust the long game. And Seattle's defense gave them the right to play that way. Seattle allowed 17.2 points per game this season, which was best in the league. Also, I'm going to be throwing out some stats for y'all. So be prepared. Your girl came with receipts. All right. So, like I was saying, Seattle allowed 17.2 points per game this season, which was best in the league. So, when your defense is holding teams to roughly like 17 a game, it changes everything for your quarterback. It changes how you call plays, it changes what you consider a good drive, and it changes how desperate you feel on third and long. It also allows you to play with patience without feeling like patience is passive. Seattle didn't just defend well, they created endings. So, Fox Sports' team defensive stats, let's say that 6 times fast, they have Seattle at 47 sacks and 18 interceptions in the regular season. And why does that matter? Well, it matters because it means they weren't just bending, they were creating negative plays, which is exactly what makes a good defense feel suffocating in January. The offenses that struggle against that kind of unit are the ones that get impatient and they start forcing throws that aren't there. And also, here's where, the Darnold story gets real. Because it's not just that he was good over a season, it's what he did in the biggest spot to get here. In the NFC Championship, Seattle beat the Rams 31-27. And Darnold threw for 346 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the Seahawks' own write-up made a point of highlighting how he answered pressure in that game. Now, that's a big deal because pressure is where quarterbacks revert to their worst habits, and pressure is where old you shows up. Pressure is where your past taps you on the shoulder and it says, hey, remember when you used to make this mistake? And in that game, not only did he not unravel, but Seattle's reporting notes that all 3 touchdown throws came on plays where he was pressured, which is exactly the kind of thing that makes you believe a quarterback isn't just along for the ride. And you guys can all look this up online. I'm not making it up. That's a part of the Darnold journey that feels important to me. And it's not that he suddenly became perfect. It's that when the game got chaotic, he didn't turn chaotic with it. Now let's flip to the other side because Drake Maye's story is not about rewriting a narrative. It's about carrying one before it becomes heavy. So when you're a young quarterback and you're playing well, the league does this thing where it tries to fast forward your career and it skips the messy parts and starts talking about you like you've already arrived permanently, like there's no regression coming. Like the league isn't about to spend an entire offseason learning you and countering you and forcing you to evolve again. May didn't just have a good season, he had a season that New England itself framed as historically significant. So the Patriots' own game notes say he finished with 4,394 passing yards and 31 touchdown passes, and they highlight a 113.5 passer rating, which they say is second only to Brady's 2007 mark in Patriots history. They also note he finished with a 72.0 completion percentage, the highest in team history, and that he had 13 games with a passer rating of 100 or more. I'm bringing that up not to read stats like we're on a broadcast, but because it supports something you can feel when you watch him. He doesn't play like a young quarterback trying to prove he belongs. He plays like someone who already knows he belongs and has the discipline to take what the defense gives him without needing to chase a highlight every series. And what's fascinating is that New England's success isn't just May throwing lasers, it's that the team around him plays in a way that protects him from the Super Bowl trap. Now, the Super Bowl trap is when a quarterback starts playing like every throw has to be legacy defining, and then you get that moment where he forces something into coverage because he wanted to answer, and suddenly the whole game flips. New England's identity under Mike Vrabel has been built around not needing those moments. The Patriots notes again point out they allowed 18.8 points per game this season, under 20, which is the kind of defensive profile that gives you permission to be patient. And the reason I keep using the word permission is because quarterbacks play differently when they feel like the game can be won without them having to be the superhero. New England also built a run game identity that isn't just nice to have, it's central. And their game notes talk about multiple big rushing outputs, including a season high 246 rushing yards versus Buffalo on December 14th, and finishing the regular season with a 243-yard rushing performance against Miami. And those aren't just fun stats, those are examples of how this team can win when it needs to win ugly. And that matters in the Super Bowl because sometimes the best thing you can do is take the game out of the air for a quarter and calm everything down. If you want a concrete example, look at how they closed the regular season. They capped a 14-3 year by beating Miami 38-10, and the notes emphasize that they scored 5 touchdowns in that game, and they finished the year with 58 offensive touchdowns, which is one of the better totals in team history. That kind of put your foot down finish tells you that this team isn't just surviving a good season, they're driving it. So when people say random matchup, what they're actually reacting to is that neither team fits the easiest story. Seattle, I should say, feels like the team that quietly became a bully. And New England feels like the team that rebuilt faster than people were ready to accept. And both teams are here because they're not easily rattled, which brings me to the part I always try to explain to people when they ask me why the Super Bowl looks different than a normal Sunday. The Super Bowl is not a talent contest. It's not the Pro Bowl with the trophy. It's a stress test. The breaks are longer, the buildup is louder, everything is overproduced. And the game is mentally exhausting in a way that doesn't show up on the clock. Obviously, I'm not a player, but trust me when I say, I mean, I can only imagine how exhausting it is as a player, as a fan, or as a media member. It's a lot. Just the overproduce factor of it all, it's a lot. Um, you can be physically fine and still be mentally tired by the middle of the third quarter just because of how many times you've had to stop, reset, sit, wait, stand, set again. You got to listen to another announcement, go back out, stop again. And that's why you see teams that look better on paper still lose because the paper doesn't measure composure. And I'll tell you something that changed for me after covering and attending these games. I don't watch the Super Bowl the same way anymore. I don't even think I watch football the same way anymore, but especially not the Super Bowl. Because once you see it up close, you realize the story is almost always hiding in the boring parts. I don't watch the ball first. I watch the quarterback between snaps, and I watch how long it takes for the play to get in. And I also watch whether the offense is snapping the ball at 5 seconds because they're late and stressed, or at 15 seconds because they're settled and in control. I watch what happens after the first mistake because every Super Bowl has one. It might be a missed opportunity in the red zone, it might be a turnover, blown coverage, or it might even be just a dumb penalty at the worst time. But the teams that win aren't the ones that never make mistakes. They're the ones that don't emotionally spiral when they do. And that's why the second drive of the third quarter is so telling. Everybody talks about halftime adjustments, but the first drive of the second half is often scripted and rehearsed. The second drive is where you find out who actually learned something in real time and who is still reacting to what just happened. So that's the lens I'm bringing into this game because if Seattle wins, it's probably going to look like Seattle being Seattle, meaning they keep the game calm, they let their defense make life difficult, and Darnold stays patient and avoids the one stretch where he tries to do too much. Now, if New England wins, it's probably going to look like the Patriots doing what they've done all year, meaning they play clean, they finish drives, they run the ball when the world expects them to throw it, and May stays emotionally steady even if a few things go wrong. Speaking of things going wrong, this is where I want to talk about the part of the Super Bowl that most people never fully understand unless they've been there because it changes your perception of the entire night. The halftime show, the behind the scenes movement, the timing, the chaos, and the stuff that doesn't translate through TV. So, if you've never been to a Super Bowl halftime show, let me just tell you, it's made for TV. So, when you're a media member or even just a regular person at the game, you're going to see the performer and their little crew, their dancing crew. And it's going to look like little tiny ants because the field is humongous. You guys are sitting far back. It's made for TV. So you can't really see the moments like you see on TV. Like, for example, The first one I was at was the Shakira J Lo halftime performance. I didn't even know Shakira did a crazy tongue thing until afterwards. Everybody was like, "Did you see the tongue?" And I'm like, "Wait, what? Hold up, what?" And yeah, you don't see that because you're not looking at it like you're sitting on your couch from the TV perspective. Um, and also, there's like I said, there's so much free space on the field because no one is out there except the performer. And one other thing that I didn't realize until my first one was that they pay people, I don't think it's fans, but they pay people to be fans. So like actors, whatever you want to call them, who cheer for the performer. So it looks weird when you're in the stands. Like it's like I said, it's definitely for TV and not for people attending the game. So you're just like, okay, this is all very scripted and fake. These people are fake cheering. It's not real fans because they know exactly where they're supposed to go. Also, the backing vocals are pre-recorded and the audio in the stadium is very echoey. Now, I'm not saying it's not fun, but it's again, I think watching it on TV is a lot better than being at the halftime performance in person. It's not like what you normally think of when you think of a concert. And when you come back from that, the game always feels smaller again. And I mean it in a good way because when you strip away the spectacle, you're just left with football, and football is about discipline over 4 quarters. That's also why when I think about this season, I keep coming back to disappointment teams, not because I want to pile on, but because disappointment teaches you what matters. And disappointment is basically the NFL's way of reminding you that talent isn't enough when the foundation isn't steady. And that's why Kansas City and Baltimore stood out to me in terms of disappointment, not because they're bad organizations, they're not, but because both are supposed to be stable. In the moment they weren't stable, the league punished them. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just death by a thousand paper cuts. And you look up in December and you're like, wait, oh, shoot, how'd this happen? But Kansas City is the modern standard for we'll figure it out. So when they don't figure it out, it's a reminder that no team is immune to instability. Baltimore, similarly, is built on identity. When identity cracks, the whole thing feels slightly uncertain, even if the roster is full of good players. And I bring that up because the contrast matters. Seattle and New England didn't chase fixes mid-season. They didn't constantly reinvent themselves. They stayed aligned, they stayed disciplined, and that's why they're here, which brings us to what decides this game. And I want to be careful here because I'm not trying to turn this into a film room lecture, but I also want you to feel like everything I'm saying is justified. Both teams were efficient this season, and the Patriots' own notes say they finished with 6,449 total yards as an offense, which is a massive output and a sign of sustained production, not just a few big games. Seattle, meanwhile, paired productive offense with the league's best scoring defense, allowing 292 total points across 17 games, which is exactly the kind of defensive foundation that travels to the Super Bowl. So, what does that mean in real terms? It means this game is going to come down to the stuff that isn't glamorous. It's going to come down to whether drives end in touchdowns or field goals. It's going to come down to whether the quarterbacks take the check down and live to fight another series or force the throw that they know they shouldn't force. It's going to come down to whether defense can steal one possession because one possession in the Super Bowl is worth 10 in the regular season. And then there's a matchup within the matchup that I think decides almost every Super Bowl. That's how a quarterback handles pressure without becoming frantic. Seattle's defense created pressure all year. And again, we're talking 47 sacks and 18 picks. New England's offense has been excellent, but even the Patriots' own season recap on NFL.com shows May was sacked a meaningful amount over the year, which is normal for a young quarterback and not necessarily a flaw, but it does highlight that Seattle's ability to disrupt timing is a real storyline. And the question isn't, can Seattle get pressure? Because they can. The question is, does May respond to pressure by making the simple play? Because that's what separates a great young quarterback from a talented young quarterback. And on the other side, New England's defense isn't just solid. They held opponents under 20 a game on average, and that tells you they can keep a Super Bowl from turning into a track meet. And that matters because the quickest way to make Darnold revert to bad habits is to make him feel like he has to score fast. And New England's entire identity is built around not giving you that kind of comfort. So if you're asking me what I think this is going to feel like, I think it's going to feel tense. I think it's going to feel like a game where the teams are trading control more than they're trading fireworks. I think it's going to be the kind of Super Bowl where you look up late in the third and you realize nobody is running away. And then the fourth quarter becomes this battle of who can stay themselves the longest. I am going to give you guys my prediction, but I'm not doing the fake certainty thing because the Super Bowl humbles everybody. I think it's a one-score game. I think it's uncomfortable. I think both quarterbacks have moments where they're going to have moments where you can feel the pressure because that's human. But I also think both have shown enough this season to believe they can respond the right way. If I have to lean one way, I lean Seattle. Not because I think New England is a fraud or because I'm ignoring how good May has been, but it's because Seattle's path to winning is slightly simpler. They can win if Darnold plays clean and the defense plays like it has played all year. They don't need perfection. They need discipline. And the Super Bowl usually rewards the team that can win without needing everything to go exactly right. This game is not about legacy the way people want it to be. It's about definition. It's about a quarterback like Darnold showing that careers don't have to be linear to be valid. It's about a quarterback like May showing that young doesn't have to mean reckless. And it's about two teams proving you don't have to dominate the conversation to dominate the night, which I love. It might look random from far away, y'all, but up close, it looks earned. And that, my friends, is a good call.